success can be measured in a lot of ways, right? The wins and losses are the obvious way to say, oh, that program's successful. But for me, again, I talked about learning so much about people. Success for me is helping people grow into being the best version of themselves. Me as the head coach being willing, ready, excited to grow as well. So that my players can see, like, man, Becks is grown in that aspect. Or maybe it's my verbal communication, maybe it's explaining my exercises at training better, maybe it's a disciplinary issue, like, man, wow, Becks has grown, but also in the sense that it's got to be a safe place first. So it's finding the right balance between, okay, the language is really important. A big thing we talked about is mindfulness on how other people are receiving your communication. So you're not going to be perfect. We say it from day one. We don't want perfection. We want you to strive to be your best, and we want you to be mindful of how your tone of voice comes across.
Hello and welcome to the Reflective Coach podcast with me, Coach Luca. I hope you're well and I hope you've been enjoying all the episodes and the recent content which is being shared with yourselves recently. I bring you another wonderful episode and I bring you Coach Becks Young and her perspective on the framework and ideologies which she brings. We talk about her perspectives and her analysis of moving from the UK to the US and what she's been able to bring in terms of the US game from her UK experience and her outlook as to whether she will return from the US back to the UK. We talked about family in that perspective. We talked about personal growth and growing a family whilst being abroad and how that could have an outlook on the future as to whether she has aspirations or whether any outlook towards moving back. However, it was great because we talked about contrasting and comparing experiences between the UK and the US, as well as being able to understand a coach transferring or moving out from the UK to the US and what they're able to bring to the game compared to a USA born and US citizen who is now coaching. It's great to add to the all-round perspective, but when we talk about what we're able to bring in every coach, those cultural experiences can really add value to the club, to the team, and it can also add value to their personal experiences, which is something we all want to take away with life. So this is such a wonderful insight in terms of coaching, but about life itself and how that plays on that outlook. It was wonderful to speak to Becks because being a UK coach based myself, it was great to hear about how a coach has transferred and moved out of the UK to the US and how they've been able to adapt, grow and adopt in terms of how they've been able to learn and what they're enjoying about being abroad. Now there is so much within this because we talk about experiences, giving and how that looks. We talked about success, we talked about rewarding growth, player expectations, coach expectations, being the best version of yourself, authenticity and conduct. We talked about language, accountability and standards, and how that language and repetition can be constructive, and how that is and how that plays a part. We talked then about competitive environments and how that takes place, and also the opportunity to reflect on mindfulness, both from the coaches and the players, and how this plays a part in terms of mental training, especially on and off the pitch, but how setting up these sessions and the type of language that we use, we have to be mindful in terms of the perspectives, the reception, and how the experiences will be taken on board by the players and how they will reflect and respond to it as well as the coaching team and any other stakeholders that engage for us is a major consideration for when you work with your stakeholders in any environment, both professionally and within the coaching world. Now, it's great because we talked about that authenticity in a controlled way. We talked about squad management, picking squads and choices of players. We then interlinked in terms of that leadership of the squad, recruitment, and how bringing in different personalities can complement the squad. But again, that authenticity, controlling the environment in a certain constructive manner, having that opportunity of mindfulness in terms of player expectations is really important when using that language and repetition. So therefore you're building the ideology, you're building the framework, you're building the philosophy, and yet leadership is received in a way that is understood but allows constructive basis where players can reflect and be the best version of themselves so that they can work even closer with the coaches, maximizing their opportunity on the program and the team available, with the chance of speaking to Becks right throughout the season and taking as much away as possible from her and her coaching team. When listening to these episodes, it's great because you could listen from the insight of a player and how you can understand coaches and the way they work. You can understand the coaching environment and what you're able to actually adopt and approach from a coach, or how you can develop that relationship to benefit you. Or if you're a coach, how you can interlink and gain this with your players, develop even more foundations to build upon your philosophy and your framework, or how you're going to develop your framework for the future. So there are so many different perspectives and so many different areas that you could listen from. And whether you're a player, you're a coach, you're a professional, you're a teacher, you're a parent, a club member, a director, or so on, there are so many considerations which is going to allow you not only to adapt your leadership and your philosophy, but how you can hold everyone else accountable, but to undertake those perspectives of understanding the player and the coach and what they do to bring harmony to your squad. But overall, we talked about language and constructiveness, philosophy and does it exist, authenticity and conduct, the controllables and how, mindfulness and player profiling, framework of life skills, which is a really important point, and being the best version of you. There is so much within this episode, and I absolutely loved speaking to Coach Becks Young. There is so much within this episode, and I couldn't wait to share it. But there have been so many wonderful episodes recently and so much content to share. This is a top-tier episode to listen to, as there are with so many. Now, Becks is doing well, and I know the end of the season has come about, and she has had a great reflection point, and now I'm so glad to finally share this and get this out there. I had such a wonderful time speaking to her, and I had such great insights, and just for this introduction alone, I could produce another hour worth of content. But this was a really enjoyable episode, and I hope you enjoy it as well. You can listen to it on Spotify and YouTube, as well as find it on LinkedIn and Twitter, as well as Flickr and TikTok. But if you could drop a like, drop a follow, drop a subscribe, and leave a comment, especially on Spotify, YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn, it does really help the podcast. As you can see on screen, I'm at @Luca96, at TRC Podcast_ on Twitter. It is the Reflective Coach Podcast everywhere else. So by dropping those follows, dropping those likes, and those subscribes, it does really help the podcast. Please share every episode that you listen to. Please continue to add to your journal and your notes. There are so many wonderful insights and experiences to share with yourselves, and this is a fantastic opportunity to do so. Please enjoy this episode. I really enjoyed listening back to it. I enjoyed sitting through it, and I know this is such a top tier episode really to share and get out there with yourselves. But it's a big thank you from me, and I hope that you continue to add to your notes and your journal. This is Coach Luca on the Reflective Coach Podcast with Coach Becks Young.
Obviously, actions speak louder than words. And I think that's really important, that if I'm saying, hey, we want you to be your best self doesn't look the same every day. Sometimes your best self is, hey, you showed up to training on time. I know you got stuff going on at home, but you're here. Thanks for being here. You're giving your best. And some days you score a hat trick and everyone thinks you're the hero. Always excited to talk all things soccer and coaching. So yeah, ready to see what you have for me. I'm excited.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And wow, it's such a strong invite and great to have you on. How's your day going so far? How's the morning gone?
Yeah, it's going well. We're getting our kit, all the incoming training gear is in. We got our crew necks, our sweaters today, and we're just missing the uniforms, the kits. So we'll be getting them soon, and then we'll be decked out for the incoming season. So but yeah, other than that, just tying up loose ends here and there, and getting ready. It's camp season is starting thick and fast. So getting things tied up in the office, and then ready to kind of be on the road for the next few weeks, coaching at high school camps.
And for those camps then, do you tend to move around, say, every week to a different camp? How does that tend to work for you?
So I'm very lucky in terms of, so I live in Erie, Pennsylvania. So Lake Erie College is an hour away from me. So I've got that nice commute every day, which I've been listening to the Harry Potter books recently. Started off with podcasts and moved into Harry Potter. So not sure if that's a good or a bad thing, but locally in Erie, there's a lot of camps that go on. Edinburgh University, they run high school camps. So they'll have high school teams will come in from New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio to do kind of like preseason training, but they'll be given a college coach or a local coach that'll coach them for 4 days. They get 2 training sessions a day and a game at night, which load wise seems a lot, but it's a really good time. So I've got 3 or 4 of those across the next few weeks. The first one starts tomorrow, and then in Erie itself, they do the same again. Teams from the kind of the tri-state area that come in, and it's really fun because a lot of coaches come in from schools from around the tri-state area, and it's good to chat with them and pick their brains and try and steal a couple sessions off of them that they do for their camp kids. So it's pretty awesome as well, recruitment wise, because you're getting to work with a high school team, and obviously you hope they have a great experience and they think, oh gee, Becks Young was pretty cool. We'll have to check out Lake Erie in a year and see what they've got cooking over there. But it's a fun time. It's definitely draining. By camp 3, my voice barely works, but it's super rewarding. It's a great time.
It sounds very exciting. Obviously, great to connect with those young players and individuals, and not only to promote yourself naturally, not to go out and go, I am Becks Young, look what I'm going to do and deliver. That can just come natural, and it's great where it comes through that, and then network and create that. And you're also selling the college the program as well by delivering and being that great coach naturally by what you do and delivering that day to day over the camps. So when that comes together, and obviously that might look as a connection of network whereby these coaches come together, you're able to liaise with them, the players come in, they get allocated, say, a college coach. Is that sort of organised through the state, or is it sort of subcontracted out or contracted out in some way? How does that work operationally in that perspective then?
So there's 2 kind of going on at the same time. One is run through Edinburgh Women's Soccer. So their head coach and the assistant coach, they obviously have their connections that they've worked with for a while that keep coming back. And then the other group based in Erie, it's Erie Premier Sports. So they sort of, I guess they're a company that kind of sources teams to come in. They house them. They'll purchase contracts from local universities. So, for example, they'll stay at Mercyhurst University or Gannon University, which are local, and then they'll train up, every day. So they kind of source it all themselves, and then they obviously reach out to coaches. Hey, are you interested? And again, they've got a list of coaches that have worked for the last few years that they always go to, but they're always looking for new coaches as well to jump in and help. I've coached for the last 4 years. I think I've been part of those camps, so it's nice that at least they keep calling me to come back. So that's helpful.
It sounds very, very exciting, and doing a great job to keep being invited back, and especially when it's that opportunity to have that call and continue delivering. Especially as there's a wider range of other coaches that might be available as well. That could change in terms of perspective program, how they want it to look. Maybe other coaches coming in, but it's great that you can continue to go back and deliver on that, and that's something which excites and interests you. So we touched upon just what you may be doing over the next few weeks, and a little bit into what you are doing. But I'm not sure whether you wanted to introduce yourself and give yourself a bit more of a scope coming in.
Yeah, so obviously my name is Becks Young. I'm originally from Northern Ireland, so my whole kind of soccer background was from Northern Ireland until I was 19. I came over to the US. I went to a school in Alabama called University of West Alabama for 1 year. For whatever reason, it wasn't my true home, I guess, to put it that way. And I transferred up north to Mercyhurst University, where I completed my undergrad was fortunate to then be trusted to become a graduate assistant coach. So where I was getting my master's, and I was coaching the women's team that I just played for and captained, which, that's a challenge in itself. But, it was a great first step into the college coaching realm for me, and a great learning curve. And then from there, I moved to Michigan for 1 year. I coached at Adrian College as an assistant again. Coached under an amazing coach, Ali Alamdari. He taught me so much in that 1 year, and it was the COVID year as well. So that was a really nice space where people really mattered in terms of, there wasn't soccer, right? Seasons were cancelled left, right, and center, and it was limited games. So that was an amazing, obviously COVID was not wonderful by any means, but in terms of what I learned on the human basis, that was an incredible year of growth for me. Then I moved back to Erie, got married. My husband's from Erie, and I coached at a local college for a year as a volunteer, Gannon University, and then was able to move into a pro-am women's team, the Erie Commodores, which I coached last summer and then this summer. And then, I got hired here at Lake Erie in February, and hopefully there's a lot more history to come and to make. But that's kind of my journey so far. So I've just wrapped up my season with my women's team this past weekend. So yeah, Northern Ireland by birth, and kind of always had dreams to come to America ever since I watched Bend It Like Beckham. I really thought I was going to be a California girl though. They obviously went to Santa Clara, and then Katy Perry had the song California Girls, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to go to California, everything's going to work out. I've still actually not been to California. I've been here for 10 years. So it works out the way it's meant to.
Yeah, exactly, and it sounds pretty exciting what you've done as well as, and coming from Northern Ireland. When you started talking, I thought I could pick up on a bit of a twang and a bit of an accent there, and I was hoping you was going to come out and say it rather than asking it. But it's great to sort of see someone that's in a very similar place in terms of that UK and where I'm from as well, and you're at, and to see someone who's maybe 10 years into that journey, how they got there, what they're currently doing, how that may have played out, the moves that they've made, the personal life, the different choices in terms of whether that you might stay out there and never come back, for example, and how that plays out, and just understanding maybe the psychology of the coach and how that works, especially a Brit abroad going across to America can sometimes be as you say, amazing and very exciting, but it can also be very daunting as well, because you're not in Britain anymore, and same for anyone that can move around. So whilst you've gone from Northern Ireland across to America, and obviously you're doing well now, you're married, which is great news, and life has worked out for you in that sense. But whilst on that flip side, would the move to the UK ever be on the cards, maybe, or is it stay out in America?
It's one of those things of where coaching takes me. Obviously the game is developing really rapidly back home, the women's game. So it would be amazing, someday to come back. But as for the next 5 to 10 years, I doubt that I'd move back. But again, that's the great thing about soccer. It took me to America, and who knows where it takes me next. But definitely for now, I've got to build something special here at Lake Erie, and then we'll see where the world takes me or where the game takes me.
And you never know, and again, where life might work out. But as you say there, build something exciting. What is that excitement that you're going to build, and maybe what is that vision that you've got in your head that you'd like to achieve?
Yeah, so obviously I've been here since February, and success can be measured in a lot of ways, right? The wins and losses are the obvious way to say, oh, that program's successful. But for me, again, I talked about learning so much about people. Success for me is helping people grow into being the best version of themselves. So, kind of that excellence in everything mindset of, can you be the best teammate you can be? Can you be the best athlete you can be? Can you be the best student you can be? Can we get you to that degree? Can we send you off into the workplace and your employers are saying, gee, we need Luca on our team. Do you see how he treats other people? Do you see how he works well with people around him? Do you see how he leads? We need him. He must be in our workforce. And for me, that success of helping people be the best version of themselves and grow and be ready for adult life and whatever it brings for them. Because I'm sure whenever I was a graduating senior, I was not sure what was next, but I was, maybe I was ready for anything. I definitely wasn't, by the way. But can I help people be ready for that, and have grown through situations that leads them to problem solving well, that leads them to collaborating well, that leads them to just be successful in whatever they choose to do.
And that sounds great. And it's, you're creating lifelong experiences for people then, and opportunities for them. And you by the time you get those maybe graduates out, or the individuals out there, they're helping enhance the reputation of not only yourself as well as the college and the program in the process as well. And that's maybe not by going out and gearing up, say, a strategy to make sure that happens. By delivering what you're doing every day, and those values, those experiences, those expectations, and the experience that you're giving, they're going to go out there, they're going to deliver that, and they're going to think, quite highly of the establishment. And I know it's very similar because of the high school I went to. They're like, right, when you go out, the high school's recognised through the names because of what we've developed over the years. And I've had a conversation with someone a couple of years back, and they said, how can your organisation be recognised in that sense? How can they have that expectation? It's like, because it's built through the experiences of past students, those who graduated, they know that they're getting quality. And it's something that I was chatting about with a senior leader where I currently work now. And he said, we take staff on from that school, that organisation, because we know we're going to get good staff. And I was like, right, you've proven my point, and I'm glad to see it. And it's the same there as well. So it's great that they have those connections, and it's great that they're going out and doing that. And it's great that you look at the people and what you're able to offer them as well. And whilst you're, setting up this fantastic excitement, you've got this vision, how you want success to look like, what it will look like. You talked about experience and giving the best experiences. And you're going to do that by giving out these life experiences and skills, etc. But how do you create the best experience, and what do you go and do as a head coach to ensure you're delivering on that experience then?
$1 million question. I love trial and error. So when we talk we as coaches expect our players to be flexible, continually growing, getting better, being themselves. So where it starts is with me, and me as the head coach being willing, ready, excited to grow as well. So that my players can see man, Becks is grown in that aspect. Or maybe it's my verbal communication, maybe it's explaining my exercises at training better. Maybe it's a disciplinary issue. Wow, Becks has grown, but also in the sense that it's got to be a safe place first. You've got to be able to feel. So as an individual, you've got to know that if you miss a penalty kick, or you misplace a pass, or you score an own goal, it's all right. So on the very basis of growing and trying to be our best, can we allow mistakes? Can we allow failure? Can we then give the platform that players grow through that failure? That failure can't be this big scary thing that, look, you've tripped over the ball inside the box, we've conceded a goal, we've lost 1-0, you're never going to play again. That can't be the way. That's oh man, you didn't mean to trip, did you? Nope. Yeah, didn't think so. Let's look on to the next piece. So I think a lot of it is through, obviously, actions speak louder than words. And I think that's really important, that if I'm saying, hey, we want you to be your best self doesn't look the same every day. Sometimes your best self is, hey, you showed up to training on time. I know you got stuff going on at home, but you're here. Thanks for being here. You're giving your best. And some days you score a hat trick and everyone thinks you're the hero. But I think it's we don't want perfection. We want your authentic, genuine self, but we want you to be striving for the best version of you every day, whatever that looks like on a given day. Because your technique, your feet, results, they're never guaranteed. But how you conduct yourself, what you're striving for, if that can be consistent, I think that creates a safe space where players know it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to fail, And then that helps us kind of grow that culture and that environment of all coach needs from us is to try our best.
I love
try our
that.
best in the classroom, try our best on the field, be a good teammate.
Absolutely, I love that, and I think that's such a great insight again to who the person is in terms of the player that you are coaching, how you develop them, and in terms of those expectations, those standards, that culture, that environment that you're creating. And when it comes down to it, you're delivering fantastic individuals that will hopefully come out of the program because of the experiences. So it's interlinking that full circle picture or that wider picture that you're painting and delivering whilst they're on that journey through the college program. And whilst you talk about that conduct and that authenticity of who they are, whilst you're looking at a player or maybe identifying them or you're recruiting them or they might be on your program, you get to know them over a period of time on and off the field. You spend a lot of time with them. But how can you truly know when someone's being authentic with you and you get through to who the person actually is?
It's a really good question. So our process is, I always start with a phone call, and that phone call, depending on the personality of the player, sometimes they're talkers, sometimes they're not, sometimes they're shy. It lasts anywhere between like 25 minutes to an hour and 15. So sometimes my husband's staring at me like, hey, we're meant to go somewhere. And I'm like, well, we're having a great conversation here. And longer versus shorter, that doesn't really indicate anything in terms of authenticity, but you try to get a feel for what they like. One of the main questions I ask is, tell me about the people that are important to you. And that to me says a lot about the individual. Are they naming like 12 different people? Are they naming 3 people? Again, there's no right or wrong way. It's what sort of vibes you're getting from that person and an insight into their life. But the idea behind it is, if I'm someone that says I really care about my players and I care about getting to know them and getting the best, I've got to know who's important to them. So that the phone call really, really helps. I think another piece is watching how they interact with their teammates on their club teams or their high school teams in tough moments. Because you even see it with Pep and Klopp, right? When they're top of the league, everything's amazing. It's so jovial after games in the press conference, but all of a sudden they lose a game and Klopp's throwing a rager, Pep's annoyed about something silly, and it's like, okay, in those tough moments, that's where character's shown. Everyone can be happy when they're winning, but when your team's 1-0 down, or you're losing to a team that you're not meant to be losing to, what's your conduct to your teammates? Also, how well do you warm up? How important is that piece to you to get your body ready to play? So a lot of the true character pieces are revealed, kind of silently almost when I'm not talking to them. What is it? I can't even remember the quote, but your culture is what's going on when the lights are off, when no one's watching what's happening. So when I'm watching and I'm chatting, we're at a good level. No one's going to be cursing at me or revealing crazy stuff like that. But what does it look like in a tough game? And things like that. And another part is as well, we value the people that are already in the door. So on those visits, hey, what sort of vibe did you get from them? Yeah, I really liked her. She seemed like, she wants to be in. She seems like she'll fit in well. Great. That's awesome. Again, you can't put too much stock into that, because still in that environment, players are going to be putting on their best face. And even if they put on a bad face, maybe they're stressed. Maybe it's an environment that they're shy, and it was just they were uncomfortable for, whatever reason. So you can't put too much stock into that. A player's like, I didn't really like her, coach. Okay, well, thank you for the information. Hopefully we'll get bring her in or we won't. But I think involving the teammates that are going to be with those players in that process is important as well.
Absolutely. And it sounds great in terms of those individuals and how you get them through the door, how you interlink those experiences, how you build upon those relationships, how you identify who they truly are. Because sometimes we can talk to athletes and, they got that competitive nature in them. They might be the winner. They might not like to show that emotional side, or when they've got anxiety, or when they get something wrong, because they don't like to show that side off. And sometimes when you try to get through to who they are authentically and get through down to, these barriers, and once they're out of the way, sometimes they don't really always be honest, because they're masking that and they're trying to hide it, and sometimes they won't give you the true sense of information, such as, you might be looking at this club, you might be looking at that program, or you're thinking about leaving, and sometimes that's hard because they might just hit you with that bombshell, and then it's like, oh, you weren't being authentic, and I always thought you were. And sometimes that's hard to take on board as a coach or on board as an individual, even in life as well. And just sometimes having that authentic nature and that expectation isn't easy for a player to comprehend or give across. So it's great that you create that environment, allowing them to be authentic and finding those other opportunities that allows you to do that. And whilst you've built a sort of picture around what you'd like your athlete to be, how you would like them to come on board to the program, the outcomes you'd like for them, how you're going to support them. Do you have a set, say, player characteristic profile like you'd like to see? So, for example, you might like to see respect from them. You might like to see fairness. You might like to see that competitive nature. It might be a supporting teammate, for example. What sort of characteristic around the player profile, away from the technical side, do you like to see from, say, 10 standard players that you pick from?
It's a really good question. I don't know if I've quantified it. I will also say I try to aim for the picture that I'm talking about. We definitely get things wrong, and that's where the growth piece comes in. We have to grow through the trial and error of what's working and what hasn't, but that's definitely the aim is that. But in terms of player profile, I mean, good person, do you when you're on a visit, do you treat your parents with respect? After the game, are you carrying your own bags off the pitch? Or are you waiting for mom to come pick the bags up? Are you holding doors open for people? Is it please? Is it thank you? Those sorts of things, manners can be taught, but if it's an automatic thing, you kind of know the background of someone that's coming in. Also, on visits as well, are you confident to talk? Or are you waiting for mom and dad to pick you up? Can you talk well about yourself be arrogant, don't be arrogant either way, but are you confident to lead your own charge during the recruitment process? That tells me, one, that you'll be ready to let go of mom and dad who won't be texting me every day, that won't be emailing me every day telling me you should be playing, but it tells me that you can handle yourself. And in those moments where things won't always go well, right? Only 11 players can start, 18 max will play in a game, so that leaves about 12 other players that don't play per game. So are you able to handle those conversations of, hey coach, tell me why? I can handle it. Tell me why I'm not playing, what I need to work on, how can I improve? So those are things that I put a lot of stock into, because again, we all paint a picture of ourselves, but when we get here, the picture you've painted might have been fantastic because you were sitting in your bedroom at home, versus now you're on campus, things have got a little scary. How well do you handle yourself in a new environment? And I think a lot of it goes with how well they conduct themselves on visits, in communication with me. Does it seem like someone that's ready for a college experience?
And I think that's great. And I'm just making notes of that whilst you're talking, because there's so much that you have in there, and it's about unpacking that and really what you have, because that conduct is really important, especially when it comes into true nature, and then it shows that authentic self. And I'm absolutely huge on manners. So I teach in a school as well as coaching, and automatically it's like, right, sir, can I have this? And it's like, right, where's the please, where's the thank you? Let's instill that. And same for my players when they come into the session. Right, as soon as you access the session, the pause might be there, so you might do an arrival activity, but I want fist bumps before you, as soon as you arrive and as soon as you leave, and I will hold them accountable towards that, and that's my standard expectation. And that's something that's drilled into my players we'd like to see. I remember doing it once at one of the professional clubs I was at. So we was at the academy, we were watching players leave, and we were watching all the players who were happy to give a fist bump, and then those who completely blanked the coaches. And then there was one player that actually stands out in my mind, and we started having a little discussion around it. And it was just about that conduct and that expectation, what we'd like to see in terms of that professional academy player, the expectations around that character and personality we'd like to see. And it was just part of that came in part of their annual review then, because it was something that they weren't living up to all those expectations. And as much as we supported them, maybe that wasn't a character that was able to fit in with our program, and therefore was detrimental. So when it comes down to, say, that standard and those expectations within that environment, you hold players accountable because you want them to maintain and reach that. But working with young players, it can be quite difficult to do that at times, because, again, they're still young players, they're still within a program, and you have that support. But holding them accountable can be difficult because of their age sometimes. But how do you go about holding players accountable to those standards and maintaining expectations?
I think, and I'd love to know, by the way, like what you've seen in that academy setting on players who have those natural, like, thank you so much, or the fist bumps versus the ones that don't, and like what their trajectory looks like and where they end up. Because I do think that those pieces go a long way. They're not everything, right? There's jerks everywhere, and not that people that don't fist bump people are jerks, but there's people that are very focused on they matter, and some that aren't. And I'd be so curious to see the trajectory of those. I don't know if you have any insight on that.
Well, I can tell you that the outcome for that player was that he's no longer part of the program, and it wasn't just on the basis of that he didn't have those manners or didn't have that. And sometimes you can write her off. They might be level-headed, they might be the next Roy Keane, and they might not want to fist bump people. But when it comes down to that, we can look around the picture and go, right, what's his technical ability like, and we can look at all the other pillars. But it wasn't just. It was over a period of time where we didn't see him developing into the expectation or the style of play that we wanted to enhance. And now this is a player who might have been in the program for something like 5 years at this point, had moved up and down the different types of squads that we had. So at the end of the 5 year period, we were like, right, what has he actually achieved at the end of the 5 years? Right, we've seen progress whereby he's moved up to the top tier academy team, but have we seen that personality and that outcome, or now we've seen that contributing towards what our program looks like? And now, without giving up on a player and writing him off because he doesn't have this personality check, and we might lose the next £1 million player for our academy, we had to really get into say the metrics, the detail of it, looking at why he wasn't contributing that way, why he didn't achieve those expectations, and therefore, is he lacking curiosity, is he lacking learning to that ability to learn to fall into that style of player, or lacking that buy-in, lacking that insight into being that. And if it's lacking that buy-in, or going, right, I'm representing the club, this is what they want me to do, this is how I want it to look, sometimes they're too selfish then, and therefore they're detrimental to that program. So when it comes down to see those metrics and how that looks in terms of that performance outcome, that's how we sort of measured it and how we looked at it, as well as justifying it. And then we took on side the technical aspects and how that might have played out as well.
Mm-hmm.
But over a period of time, you would expect those players to come in terms of that program, and therefore to be achieving those outcomes at the end of 5 years. So even if you had a new academy coach, say, for only 3 months, that academy coach should see those values instilled from the last 5 years, for example.
So it's a holistic approach based on the values of the organization, which it's crazy how it could be a phenomenal player, but if the values don't align, it's not a good fit. And that's one piece for us, that it's got to be the right fit. Like, our school isn't for everyone, and every school is the same, right? Each school, like, there's a reason people go to certain places, there's a reason people don't go to other places, right? There's a right fit for everybody. And for us, the values that you have, and whether they, the core values or the holistic approach, if it doesn't match what you're looking for, it's okay. We have players call us and say, sorry, coach, we're going somewhere. No worries, bud. I hope you have the best time. I hope your career is fantastic. Because the right fit is the right fit, and if it isn't, that's great. But I know it is the right fit for so many. So it's those pieces that we need to be open about our values and what we expect, and if it's reciprocated, perfect. Let's dance, guys. Let's go. But if it's not, it's no hard feelings. I think that's a piece that I've had a couple conversations with players, and they're almost scared to say, like, oh, we're signing here, and it's like, that's fantastic. Don't worry, we'll find other people. That's all good. And I think for them, when I've had those conversations, they leave. You can hear their voice kind of shift halfway through, like, oh, thanks so much, coach. I really appreciate that. And it's like, yeah, we're all human beings, just looking for the right spot, the place that we can call home. So, but it is interesting that when the values don't match, it can be tough.
Of course, and I completely agree with you there, and it's interesting how you maintain and instill those standards. And sometimes, the key message there is, if it doesn't fit, then you don't have to say yes to it. You don't have to fall into it. You don't have to commit to it, because you might fall into it and say, right, there's a 3-year commitment here on a scholarship, and it's not the right fit for me, and I've always known it, and therefore that scholarship isn't as successful or as enjoyable, and therefore that experience lacks. And then they become detrimental to the team because they've lost that motivation. Then it's hard because then they're not fitting in the squad, and then an array of problems arise for both yourself as well as them them because they might be like, right, I'm going to get my parents on because I'm not getting the game time, etc., etc., as we know. But whilst that comes into play then, and you have those values and how they fit and how they may look, I was reading something yesterday in terms of around philosophy, and whether someone actually goes in and goes, right, this is my philosophy, this is what I want to do, or whether they go in and go, right, these are the values, these are the expectations, this is what I need to achieve, and this is how we're going to do it. And then over a period of time, say you're there 10, 15 years, then a philosophy sort of develops over that sense of time. But whilst you go in and have these new jobs, you've taken over a head coach role, have you gone in going, right, this is my philosophy, or have you gone in going, right, these are my values and this is how it looks, and therefore everyone from the outside might see that as a philosophy?
I'm so happy that you've asked this question, because I was talking with one of my coaching friends yesterday about a philosophy, and I'm like, I haven't been a head coach long enough to have a true philosophy. I have my core beliefs, I have my standards, but I wouldn't necessarily say especially in a playing style, I don't have I'm not Pep Guardiola yet, but I certainly have ideas and focuses on one style of play, but to core beliefs on how you need to treat your teammates, how you need to show up ready, and things like that. And for me, when I was applying for this job, that's the approach I took. But I do think that philosophy is a buzzword. So if you're a coach that says you don't have one, everyone's like, oh, you're not a real coach then. But I do believe that I just turned 29, as a 29-year-old that's been a head coach for 2 years, I think it would be strange for me to have a philosophy because I haven't experienced enough yet. But based on what I've experienced, I can refine my core beliefs and my approach to, as you say, get me to that place. Probably by the time I'm 32 or 33, that I can be ready to put down my philosophy. But I think if I were to have a philosophy, because again, it's a buzzword that everyone uses, and it's certainly a real thing. I'm not disputing that at all, and maybe some people that are younger than me are like, no, I have my philosophy, and that's awesome, and I believe that people out there certainly do. But for me and where I'm at, it's core beliefs and ready to rock. But I think in a philosophy, it's just helping people develop holistically. So and be their best selves. I would say that's my philosophical approach right now to the groups of players that I coach in whatever environment, and probably more so in the college environment where you see them every day almost. I think that's my philosophy. Helping the people in front of me be their best selves.
And I think you can define that philosophy as well, because say you had 5 different college jobs, every type of group that you have is going to be very different. So therefore you've had 5 different groups, and you might have played, a different tactical style per every college you've been in. And that's dependent upon that group. But your philosophy might stay the same right across those 5, and therefore everyone can identify to who you are. And as you touch upon, say, a coach who might have been coaching for 2 years, and they might go, right, this is my philosophy, or they might try and define it. They might have what they actually really deep down have is an ideology. So this is an idea of what they want, how they want it to look, and where they're going. And therefore, over that period of time, as age comes into it, then I think they develop a philosophy. So as they become more geared and tuned into the game of sport, like your Jose Mourinho's, like your Pep Guardiola's, Arsene Wenger's, and so on, then you really have that philosophy because it's been seen and maintained over a period of time. You get to see what that tactical shape is, etc. And whilst, Guardiola has maybe adapted his, he has that attacking style, and what that looks like is an attacking philosophy. Jose Mourinho, again, plays a very defensive philosophy, and that's over a period of time. But if you look at, say, someone like Sam Allardyce, does he go into clubs going, right, I'm going into West Brom now and I've got this philosophy of what I want to do? And I don't think it's a philosophy. I think it's more of a framework. He goes in, right, we have to play defensive. These are the expectations and this is what we need to do in a period of time. And therefore he goes in with frameworks and delivers it and tries to achieve, avoiding relegation, staying up, etc. And therefore that's, built over a period of time and how that may look. But I think there's a big difference between, what a framework is, ideology, and then philosophy, and then how that really looks. So whilst being young, you don't have to define a philosophy and have to go in and say, yeah, this is what it's going to look. It's going to be attacking football, this, that, etc. And sometimes you might shoot yourself in the foot because you might realise with the group you have, I can't be attacking here. I might have to be very balanced. So therefore, my philosophy's a lie because my principles have changed, and sometimes principles are interchangeable and not changeable. So it's the more I've had these conversations over the last few weeks, a lot of words have started to come out consistently, and I'm sitting here and I'm going, right, how many times have I heard this word? And I love hearing it. And it's great repetition, consistency. But I'm like, what does this really actually mean? How many times are we going to hear it? Because we're hearing it more and more. And like every time we see a manager going to a job now, I love this project. I love this project. I'm like, how many more projects can we keep having?
It's as if it's a finite. It's almost like I feel like the term project has like an end date. I've got a project going on in my kitchen. When the project's done, it's done. It's almost like you're already putting the full stop on it or the end date on it. Obviously, depending on what your project is, obviously it's maybe take you longer or shorter. But I think again, who am I? But the word project to me speaks to don't know what happens after we do this. We'll do this and then hopefully something else exists. Versus for me, that continuous growth of being your best self, it's I can't remember the word, infinite. That's the word, right? Like there's always opportunities versus, okay, we want to win. And maybe the project, it resets after each year. Okay, the project this year is to, for example, with Postecoglou Spurs, I'm a Spurs fan, get back into European football. Okay, great. Then what? Win a trophy. Okay, then what? If that's the project, what happens after the project's completed? And I think that can lead to a bit of chaos potentially within players, within coaching staffs of like, we did it. What's next? What do we do? But yeah, didn't think I held those beliefs about projects, but apparently I do.
And I think there again, whilst you're saying that, if you've got a project, say qualify for Europe, then win a cup, then, challenge for the league, for example, say you might maintain that over 5, 6, 7 years and so on, that squad changes multiple times and therefore you have to invest in quality to increase the squad to get better, to therefore try and win that cup and league, etc. And whilst doing that, do you really have a philosophy over that playing style? And the answer might be no to that because your squad has changed several times and therefore your tactical output. And whilst you were leading up to this head coach role and you've been appointed, obviously in your head you would have had a strategy in terms of what you would like to have seen, how you would deploy it. Obviously, your identity, how you may want that to look, how you want to deliver things, that framework, etc. But whilst going into that head coach role, what was the first thing or the first couple of things that you addressed and really wanted to implement to really get yourself across as I'm Becks, I'm here, I'm head coach. And it's not to go in and go, boom, I'm head coach and this is happening. It's just to go in and sort of go, right, this is how I want it to look and this is how I feel the program needs to go.
So it's funny, my hire date was February 20th, but I'd had a vacation that had been on the back burner since COVID to go to South Africa for 2 weeks on the 23rd. So luckily, when I jumped into the program, the assistant coach that remained, his name's Scott Wilson. He's a guy from Scotland. He's fantastic. Really knows his stuff and really cares about the girls. So what he'd been doing in the months previous was kind of, getting them comfortable with the ball at their feet, getting them fit, getting them to a stage where when the new person comes in, like you're ready, you're a good athlete, you're ready for whatever style. And I like the way he phrased it. He was like, I wasn't really doing anything tactical with them because I was thinking, well, whoever comes in next, maybe they have a completely different ideology or thought process, which I thought was pretty intelligent of him to do that. So when I came in, I had 3 days or four morning sessions from that Monday to that Thursday, where I was running sessions that would get them comfortable on the ball, that would say, hey, look, when you're stressed out on the field, the answer isn't always booting the ball out for a throw-in, and making sure they knew it was okay to lose possession, but make sure we win it back. But in terms of those first 4 days, individual player meetings was, I think, training. We trained in the morning, so training would end at 8 a.m. I'd come to my office, I'd do something, can't even remember what, for an hour and a half. I'd be, figuring out the systems on the computers and things like that. And it was player meeting. And it was the piece of like, I didn't recruit you, but let's pretend that I did. Tell me about your journey. Tell me what you love about this place. Tell me one thing you would change about this place. Making sure I said one, because you can give a negative voice a microphone and you'll be there all day listening to every little detail. But like, what's one thing that you would change? And just kind of getting a feel for the program from the player's perspective on what they loved, which funnily enough, most of their answers were my teammates. So that's great. I get to pick up a program that the players actually like each other. That's excellent. And then, I mean, we'd like better meals. Okay, everyone would like better meals. I hear you, though. So that's something for me to think about when we're planning our post-game meals. Okay, let's make sure there's variety involved, and not just going straight to Domino's. But just getting a feel for the program from their perspective and making them feel safe. Again, I want you to be your authentic self, so you've got to feel safe in my presence. So giving them a voice, it was a 40-minute meeting, and 35 of the minutes was them talking about themselves, where they've come from, what brought them here, what they like, what they don't like, and what their goals are. So kind of honing in on them, and then the always important question, tell me about the people that are important to you. So kind of getting up to speed, because I've been part of programs where there's been coaching turnover, and it's so easy for players to say, well, yeah, I'm not their player. They didn't recruit me. They don't care. Like, not they don't care about me, but like they can't wait to replace me almost. And that's not the feeling that I ever want from an individual. So I felt that it was incredibly important to, guys, I'm yours, you're mine. Like, we're doing this together. We're going to steer this program in a good direction, and we're going to do it together. And yes, of course, we're recruiting a class because we have to every single year, but you're all my players, regardless of whether I was there when you were a junior in high school or a senior in high school saying, hey, sign a line, or whether I showed up halfway through your career. So that piece was kind of my primary piece. And then I jetted off to South Africa, which was super fun. And my assistant, Scott, was able to pick back off where he'd left off with maybe a little more of a tactical framework to frame his sessions around. So, that was my first 3 days was all that. And then after they came back from spring break, I was back, and then we started kind of ironing out style of play, and then leading into our spring season, where we get 5 games in the spring. I think this year we only played 4 because weather is fantastic. That's the one nice thing about the UK. The snow is not hefty, and up here we get a hefty amount of snow, which actually didn't impede us too much, just the one game. But then we were able to kind of iron out some things on the field, and a lot of it was your language on the field to your teammates. Like, yes, you love your teammates, but can we make sure on the field the tone of voice or the language that we're using is constructive and helpful, not, hey, we need to press. Okay, that's a voice that everyone turns off to or turns their head or says, all right, kid, calm down, versus, hey, Luca, can you press their forward when they get the ball? Or, hey, Luca, can you make sure when their center back has the ball that you're showing them to the left-hand side? Or, hey, we need some of the mark. Just, Luca, can you pick up number 8? Because at that point, when you're giving a direction, you're giving the other player a choice to be a jerk. You can say, no, I'm not going to pick up that player. But most likely you're not, because you're good people. So that's the piece where you're just helping your teammates and organizing versus whining about what you're seeing in front of you. Can you make it constructive? So that was a piece as well, our language with each other, which you see at every single team. So that was a good piece of helping us grow together and helping implement when we talk about our values and who we want to be and being the best teammate you can be. That was a big piece, because your feet will speak for themselves when you take care of the intangibles. And then, when you've got the platform and the foundation set, okay, we're in a 4-3-3, and it's actually really funny because I came in thinking 4-3-3, here we go. And today my assistant and I were talking, and we're thinking, all right, maybe this formation might be, we've reassessed our strengths, and maybe this formation helps us a little better. And I actually went through that this summer with my summer team. We're going to play 4-3-3. Yeah, we've got that works. I realized too late that it wasn't working, and we switched to a 4-4-2, and all of a sudden our season ended really well, and we're laughing, and I'm scratching my head like, wow, I should have realized that earlier. But that's kind of the framework now that we're working with.
I love that, and there's so much within that as well, which you touch upon. So, whilst you're going in and how you approach getting to know those players, how you're addressing their feelings, their thoughts, because especially when a new coach comes in, and they might have a new style or framework, and how they work with the coaches, their expectations, their values, how they deploy a tactical shape or framework, etc. How they're going to manage the players, especially then, as you say, you might not have been a coach to have recruited them. So therefore, they're having a lot of anxiety about them. So they might not show their authentic, true selves because they're like, this coach knew me, this coach understood what I wanted. They may have observed me, addressed me because of the period of time, etc. So this coach is coming in, and therefore I can't show maybe the areas that I need to grow and develop on, or maybe my weaknesses, because I need to show, right, I'm competitive. I need to be in that starting lineup, and even though it might be a program for that self development and moving on, it's also a competitive program as well, which is that very fine balance and very hard to sort of hit upon. And I actually love that you touched upon language as well, because that's in my notes here as one of the things I talked to you about, and I've highlighted that yellow. So naturally, you've touched upon language. And I was listening to a very good podcast the other day, and it was an episode about language from a research paper which has recently come out. And whilst you were saying that language and asking maybe that how, it was a how question which was in my head, but you addressed that even before I've asked it again. So very good telepathically. But it was a very good example about what you would say in a player, because as you know, here in the UK, a lot of it is, clear your lines, get rid, make sure you kick it long, and all that sort of basic press high. But what does that really mean, and how much does it tone out, and therefore what's the impact? And that's something that I invested in, was a little microphone during the one game, and I recorded myself, and then I played it back, and I'm like, right, I could cut that out, I could cut that out, I could cut this. And sometimes it's the same while I listen back to myself on podcasts, and I'm like, I'm over saying that word, and I'm realising that I'm doing it. But the opposition coach actually said, why are you doing that for? I said, well, first off, it's to address how much information am I giving the players, how much are they retaining, how much of it is beneficial, and how much might have it not been impactful, and therefore can I cut that out? And he said, that's a really good learning tool. I said, yeah, that's another way I want to implement in terms of my coaching. So I'm looking at the auditory side of the game. We might look at a visual then, so we might do a bit of analysis around it. I said it's also good as a good self-reflection. But going back to that language, and therefore in the back of my head then, you're sort of creating a playbook, because, away from a philosophy, you've then got a playbook. So in that, when you touch upon language, do you think it's beneficial then to have, say, a playbook, a language whereby you only want to see that within your training sessions and you gain contact? Or is it, detrimental to have too much language? Or is it too detrimental to have limited language?
It's a great question. Again, if we want authenticity, but we want authenticity in a controlled way, right? Because sometimes we're hotheads, and that's just who we are. And so we have the capacity to be a bit sharper or firmer with people. But maybe a part of your hot-headedness is who you are as an athlete, and it helps you as an athlete be better. So it's finding the right balance between, okay, the language is really important. A big thing we talked about is mindfulness on how other people are receiving your communication. So you're not going to be perfect. We say it from day one. We don't want perfection. We want you to strive to be your best, and we want you to be mindful of how your tone of voice comes across. And that was actually a really good tool for, we have a leadership team. So, after we'd meet once a week, and a lot of it was just kind of getting to know them, what they think leadership is and things like that. And because most of the time the people with the voices on the field that have the major impact are the ones that are given a role of a captain or a leader. So for them, and I kind of gave them it turned into like a poem. I'm not really sure. I was just kind of writing down what leadership is. I have it above me, but it's, as a leader, you have to have each other's backs. As a leader, you're held to a higher standard than others. As a leader, you're not there to create problems. As a leader, your life gets more difficult. You're under more scrutiny from your peers. You're under all of this. But again, you're not meant to be perfect. So can we help guide you with your language, not stripping away your voice and not giving you my voice, because that's not going to be helpful if there's 11 Beckses running around the field. I assure you that. But in a moment where you've maybe been a bit sharp with someone, do you have the presence of mind and the human side to say, hey, look, I didn't mean what I said. That's totally on me. Hey, when I said it like that, that's my bad. The tone was bad, but I did mean this. And, so I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. So it's having that piece of awareness and self-reflection of okay, I get it, coach. I see it. I can't control it all the time, but here's what I'm doing in the back burner to kind of alleviate any mistrust. But a big piece for us was, because every team you've got your best friends no matter what. It feels like a family. Everyone said it when I came in, it's like a family here. But just because you have your best friends and you think that everyone's okay with you, maybe you haven't established a real relationship with younger players or with even players within your class, so that we give the example of two girls are like, we can hit each other really hard in practice, but it's okay, we'll go home and we'll have dinner together. And then it's like, can you do that with everyone though? No. Okay. So can we get to a place where you've built up a relationship with most of the team, if not all, where everyone can feel comfortable and safe in that piece, so that when you say something sharp with your communication, they know, okay, but it's not because Becks hates me, it's because that's just her tone of voice and she's explained that to me and she's apologized, so we're good. So I think mindfulness for us was big.
I love this, and I think mindfulness is a massive thing as well. And I was very lucky whereby I've been the head coach, I've been the manager, and I've been the lead coach, etc. However you want to frame that. And whilst I was in that position, I had a very good assistant manager, and what he'd done for a day-to-day job was a salesman, and a very good salesman. And what he does is it brought a very good perspective of how he delivers to clients and how he gets through to their mindset to buy into his products and what he can do in a period of time, and to create that sort of sales pitch. And he was like, right, how would you create a sales pitch to your players, your parents, and our stakeholders? But then if you're presenting something, that perspective might come across in a different way. So what I might say, and something that it may come across, might be construed in a very different manner. And I know I've done it this year. So I took over a new under-19s team. Unfortunately, I had to leave my very good assistant manager. And I was very lucky to then have a new assistant manager, but it was leaving a good one behind as well. But whilst I made that transition, I stepped up into the 19s. We would wrap up weekly messages on the games we'd have on a Sunday. One message I put out is we've let a lot of goals in this year. It's been a result of defensive errors collectively, and therefore a lot of goals are being conceded through the defensive mistakes. Now, one of the parents then came and see me the week after and said, you're blaming all the defence, it's the defender's fault, you're saying this, you're saying that. And I said, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not going, it's exactly their fault. I'm saying we're seeing a lot of it come from defensive mistakes. So therefore, that might be, we might have to sit into a low block. We might have to drop in. Why are we conceding that? Are we getting caught on a pace on the back? So therefore, do we have to put other players in? Therefore, we sharpened up the defence. We've just adjusted our system a little bit. I said, I'm not blaming the defenders, and therefore that perspective is important, how that comes across. And that language is really important as well, especially as you say between players, because sometimes one player might say something, then the other player might not understand it, and therefore it might be a breakdown in relationship, and conflict then arises. And as you say, then it's about that authenticity in a controlled way. So you might have that Roy Keane character as such, and that's just the way they are. But if we can control it in a way where, we understand that Roy Keane is like that, or understand that Josie is a bit hot-headed at times, but when she calls down, that's her on a pitch. So therefore, she's competitive, she's a leader, she's challenging, she wants to lead the team, etc. And that leads me into another question, and that's something which is quite big from every American which I've spoken to this week, is controlling the controllables. Now, that must be very big over in the US soccer. But when it comes to that controlled way and controlling the controllables, what would you say the controllables are that you can control on a day-to-day basis within your program?
From me personally, or where I feel my players can control?
Well, you could do both if you wanted, or choose one. It's up to you.
I guess they're both the same, right? If it's from the head down, it's controlling your attitude and your outlook. So come with a positive attitude, come ready to compete as well. You can always drive your own competitiveness, which goes into work effort, right? Or work ethic. You're ready to work hard. You're ready to be competitive. You're ready to be positive. And I think those are, even on a bad day, and again, it's easier for some than others, right? But you can always come and work hard, or give your best, work hard, and be positive with the people around you. And I think one piece that we talk about in our spiel, I guess, is that our training environment is competitive, it's energetic, and when you hit those two pieces, that's where the intensity grows. So when you're bringing the fun or the positivity, you're working as hard as you can, that's where you're intense. And then in that intensity is where the growth can happen, as a team on the field, or pushing fitness, or pushing your understanding tactically, when there's intensity and those things are great, that's where you really grow, for me anyway. But the controllables are always your work, your attitude and your work ethic, because sometimes your feet work and sometimes they don't. How many times can you hit a free kick from the same spot that goes in 12 different directions? With me anyway, it's 12 different directions. I only hit the ball 10 times, but it'll go 12 different directions. But like that piece for everyone, no matter who you are, Messi misses chances, Messi misses penalties, for goodness sake. So your feet aren't the guaranteed piece, but how hard you work and how much you help your team and people around you, that's always something within your control.
And I love that, and it creates that sort of full circle around to what your expectations are and that accountability. So therefore, if those players aren't doing those controllables, then you can hold them accountable for it. So whilst you're delivering a session, say it might be in an hour's time, and it's after a long day, they've been back-to-back lessons, you have this expectation, and you've planned a session for high intensity and high performance, and whilst you're delivering a session, you see 3 or 4 players who maybe aren't meeting that expectation, and you're feeling that your session isn't as to the higher intensity levels that you'd expect it. So therefore, are the controllables on you in terms of then that session needing to be more intensive, or are the controllables on the player for not actually stepping up to those levels?
So you've got to ask why. Is it something I'm doing that's making the intensity low? If it's something I can control, okay, maybe I can edit it or shift it. Maybe there was too many rules. Maybe everyone's too wrapped up in what's the drill, what we're doing, versus just working hard and executing the outcomes. Also, okay, who are the people that aren't being intense? Because sometimes you've just got those players that, for whatever reason, on any given day, it's low energy, and you can try and impact and hopefully make a difference. So who is it? Is it someone that was sick recently, is coming off illness? Is it someone that's coming off of an injury and they might not be bringing intensity, but they're working hard? So it's looking at the why and the who, and then being a genius and choosing the right outcome afterwards, which I certainly don't do. But I think it's important to look at the why and the who, and then maybe it's the drill needed altered, that the space was too big or the space was too small, or again, maybe there was too many rules, or maybe it was just one of those days where my session wasn't what the team needed that day. The team actually needed a bit more low intensity. Maybe it was finals week or half term or midterms, and they're just coming off of exams, and what they just need is a bit of lightheartedness, and instead of to be pushed hard. So I think having a pulse there is where the elite coaches certainly shine, and that's where I aspire to be. But I think I did a year of applied behavior analysis, so I'm always curious about the who and the why. Now, every player I've ever coached will tell you that certainly I'll be annoyed. And sometimes I'll be annoyed. I don't choose the right outcome at all the time. So there's certainly been times where I've probably been too harsh, or definitely been too harsh, or got it wrong. But at my core, these are my beliefs and what I aim for, but certainly I get it wrong.
That elite group of coaches, I have no doubt that you're going to get there and succeed within doing that. And that trial and error just leads to everyone getting to the levels that they aspire to. And well, hopefully that's the plan anyway, but it sounds like you're on that right journey and pathway to do so. And whilst you talk about executing outcomes and having those, and therefore them being determined by controllables, or controllables contributing towards that, when you say go into, say, a match day and approaching that, do you then have a set of outcomes that you'd like your team to execute and achieve? Or is it seeing that a game play out and then going, right, these were our achievements? How do you tend to approach that? And it might be the same over a course of a season as well.
Each group is different in terms of that. For us, we've just got to be performance based. If we feel we kept the ball well, now you've actually probed me in a good way that I'll probably need to have data to back up what our achievements actually are. So if we're saying we need to have the ball more, what does that really mean? Did we look comfortable on the ball? Can I quantify that? That's something now I'll have to go, and thank you, giving me some work after this, but it's I probably need to quantify things more. For us, the last fall wasn't splendid. Conceded goals, didn't score so many. So I think probably a quantifiable one that we'll look at is how many times we're able to create goal scoring chances. How did we score goals in the game? How many times did we defend? Like how many chances were we giving up? I think that'll be within both boxes, that'll be something that we'll look to, considering last year we didn't score too many and we conceded some. But dang, good question. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. So I think, the macro goals, I don't even know if that's macro, but the bigger picture goals will be, have we scored more than last year? Have we conceded less? How were our performances leading us to one way or the other? So again, we'll have to focus on the performance, and I'll have to quantify what I mean by my performance now, thanks to your question, which is incredibly helpful. And I'm sure my players will very much be grateful for that. But yeah, I think in terms of each group, it shifts a little bit, but great question.
That's right, no problems at all, and it's great to hear that insight in how you approach it and how you might look at that in terms of that future. So therefore, you naturally created that reflective process. And whilst you may look at that, quantifiable outcomes and that data and how that may look, say you highlight an area where you might say you're lacking on possession this year, and then you might get into the data upon it and the real, micro detail in terms of that. And whilst you want to see, higher increase in possession, a higher tempo, say more ball recoveries, say more passes being created and generated, would that then influence upon your recruitment around your players next year to be that possession-based team, for example? Or would you have a sort of set outcome of players that you need to recruit, how you would like that to look, and then try to instill that style and that framework?
It's certainly a bit of both. I think the players that we recruit, they come at a good age where, for the most part, they're very coachable. Especially the American-based ones are very coachable. Sometimes I was the same, right? Oh, well, in Northern Ireland we did this. Well, you're not in Northern Ireland anymore, Becks. No one cares. This is how things are at your new team. So you get a bit more backlash with the foreigners like myself. But in terms of looking at, for example, at the last team I was coaching at, very poor in the air. So goal kicks, punts from the keeper. We probably lost most of the balls out of the air, which again shifts the tone of the game. If the other team's heading it straight back at you, it's a bit more of a scramble. So certainly there it was, we need a ball winner. We need someone that's going to be fierce in the air in the midfield area that's going to shift the ball in our favor. You think how many times the ball's in the air during a game, or how many 50-50s? Do you have someone that's going to go and do that? Where I'm at right now, yep, happy days. We've got that. So it's just looking at what other needs that we perceive that we have, and especially right now, we're perceiving what areas that we think we need to improve upon. And obviously, in any environment, you can always improve everywhere. But in terms of, for example, in this fall, we're bringing in 15 new players. So, we'll see. Hopefully, they're really good people. We believe that they're talented, and we'll see what the fall brings. And then it's truly only after the first maybe month of the season where you realize, okay, these are where the gaps are. These are the holes that we have. And but apart from that, because sometimes that can be too late to realize, you look for players that no matter what system that you play, or no matter what what style that you have, I'm always going to want players that are comfortable on the ball. I'm always going to want players that can defend 1v1. I'm always going to want players that can run hard and be brave. And then getting those people in, whether it's a defender that does those three things, whether it's a midfielder that does those three things, or a forward that does those three things, they'll find their way onto the pitch, or they should, if I've done my job well. And they are who I think they are, those intangible pieces, I think you can fit anywhere, especially where we're at as a program right now. We just need, people that are willing to work hard for their teammates and are comfortable on the ball and want to fight and scrap.
I love that. And say you leave in 5 years' time and you want a program to be defined and left in a certain position. How would you like that program to be defined, and what position would you like to leave it in then?
So right now, last season we finished bottom of the conference. And in the last few seasons, we've struggled to win conference games. And actually, when I was being hired, we had the 5-year plan, and I want us to be established as a good GMAC team. So we play in the GMAC conference. I want us to be established as a team that consistently is fighting to get into those playoff spots. And from a player perspective, I want them to feel that they were pushed positively. I want them to feel like they've grown as a human being. I want them to leave this place loving soccer still. Because so many people go to college soccer and they don't play soccer ever again. They leave at 22, which for us as British people, it's like, what do you mean you're 22 years old, you've graduated, and you don't play soccer anymore? You're 22, that's mental. Versus, being back home and playing until you're 35 or, whatever leagues that you're ending up being in. But I think that the love of the game, a lot of people come and maybe it's because they don't choose the right fit, or maybe for whatever reason they didn't feel valued in whatever role they had, they start to resent the game. Which for me as a female coach, we need more female coaches in the youth ranks, in the college ranks, in any rank. There's a love of the game drives so much. It drives people to stay connected. It drives people to care about the little 6-year-old kids in their community that doesn't have a coach. Well, I played Division II college soccer. I can help. And having the confidence and the love of the game to do that, I think that's really important. And that's something that it doesn't. You can be the best coach in the world, and someone will have something bad to say, right? A player that maybe didn't play as much as they wanted or whatever. But I think after experiencing college soccer in a Becks Young program, I want my players to still love soccer and to still see value and feel like I was valued here. Maybe I didn't play 90 minutes every game, but I was certainly valued in this place. And I love soccer, and I'll give back to the sport.
And that's then when it comes down to your true management as a head coach and that leadership, because, it's going to be asked of you anyway, and it's going to be accountable because, you've got a very big squad, as you touched upon earlier. You've got something like 26 to 28 players. Now, you can only take a squad of 18, then you can only play 11, and then you might only have 5 subs, for example. And whilst you're doing that, there's a lot of game time which needs to be managed, especially over a course of a season, on a squad that large and that big. And it's very difficult then if you don't have a big schedule. And then you're on a college program, and then minutes might have to be justified. And then how can you really look at the developmental metrics or the outcomes of players because they're lacking on game time? Then it becomes a real difficult situation to sort of manage, and it's difficult as that head coach. So big congratulations in taking that on board and taking that on. But it's part and parcel of the game, and it's a thankless task as well. And when it comes down to that and how you want that to look and create those values, and a player to look back and go, oh yeah, I was valued, I'm happy to have been part of that program, and maybe I slipped up on minutes, and maybe I might find a level whereby I might get more minutes next year, or so on. How do you sort of manage that over a course of a season then?
Well, this coming fall will be my first proper season. In the spring we had limited. We're lucky in the college game where our squad looking into the fall is at 33. We have a couple unfortunate injuries, so it kind of bumps us down to about 30. But we can travel everyone to games. Everyone can be on the bench. It's not regimented like the FIFA rules where it is only 18 and you can only sub 5 on. So in theory, you could play everybody. It's not ideal for cohesion, for everything. It's not. But if you look at it on a player minute standpoint, maybe that's how everyone would be happy. Obviously, that's not how it should work or how it could work, or again, for cohesion purposes. But yeah, this will be my first fall where I'm managing those things. And my hope is that with an open door policy and just being open and honest, I think transparency is really important. I think players need to be told, okay, this is where I see you at. This is what you need to work on. Okay, you want to start 90 minutes? I don't think you'll ever, you can't ever really say that because you never know. But I think right now you're maybe a year or so off. Let's focus on these. Let's focus on getting a couple minutes first, and we'll see where that takes you. But I think I'm expecting and anticipating a lot of conversations in the office and truthful, honest, transparent conversations, because I think it's great to blow smoke in the short term, but in the end, you just leave people feeling unfulfilled and let down in the end. So I think openness is really important. It's a tough thing, right? People are tough to manage, and you know, everyone deserves the best. That's the thing. And again, some people really only can value themselves if they're a 90-minute player. Some only value themselves if they're getting any sort of minutes. So all of a sudden, if it's being taken away, they feel like they have no worth. So I think a lot of the work in the foreground is that your value and your worth to this team and this school and the world is not based on your soccer minutes that you get, and it can never be that. So I think a lot of diligent work on that throughout the season, and reminders here and there, but I think it's also important to reward growth that you see. So whether or not you're our 16th best player on the day, maybe if I've noticed, man, Luca's been working his butt off, you know, he deserves some sort of reward to see, like, hey, look, we see you. Who knows, though? Again, it's my first fall of being the head honcho, and yeah, I'm excited to get things wrong and have some humble lessons in the fall, but I do believe that communication can solve a lot of things. Honest and transparent communication can solve a lot of things, but sometimes just whatever you do won't be enough, and it won't matter, and people will be upset and unhappy. So it's just trial and error, man.
Absolutely.
We'll
And I think it's that mindfulness, as you say, that communication, how you're already approaching it without having, experienced that longer term as a head coach already. And it can be quite daunting going into that, going, right, I've actually got a squad of, say, 30 to 33 players to manage. I've got to do this over a series of games. Then they might have teaching outcomes to achieve. Then there's a lot of unaccountables, and that might come higher, the governors, etc., and how that may look, or the administration. And that's something which, comes down to every coaching role that comes into it, and that's the world of sport. But it's also very exciting as well, because you might end up going, right, I might define my starting 11, then I might pick my best 18, then I might have a secondary squad, and then we might have a look at the course of the season. So over the Christmas period, if we're positioned here, then the second squad might end up having more minutes. We might reduce minutes for the starting team, and therefore we manage their fitness, and therefore we look at the components and development, and how that may play over the next 3-4 years, and how you pursue as a head coach will look totally different as you gain that more experience. So it's very exciting how that reflective journey and how you go around that it goes. And there's so much which we could really delve into and create another episode just on playing time, because I've got 100 questions here, 100 questions there, because it's right, how do you look at equal game time and whether that's important or whether it's not, and how do you justify not giving that equal? How do you change the mindset across the team? How do you take away minutes from a player and then say you don't deserve that and therefore don't reward it? How can you then sort of look back when you're older and they're older and go, do you know what, they were only 16, 17 once and they didn't have those minutes, could they have benefited from it more? And how do I look into the future, but how do I make sure I'm capturing it now? How do I make sure I get the competitive nature? How do I make sure the players who deserve the game time get those minutes? So, if I've got 5 players who are lesser technical, maybe not working as hard, but they have to have some minutes because the college said so by, their systematic approach, how can I really justify that over 5 players? So therefore, that again, those 5 players have missed out on game time, which they could have had, and when they're older, should have been actually rewarded. But there's so much that actually comes into that, and that creates another great topic and debate, and for another episode. Then there's so much which we've covered in this, and so much which we talked about. And I know we planned for an hour. We said if we went over that, it's fine as well. But I'm also conscious of it cutting into your day and everything that you're up to, especially how busy you are. So we've got up to a good point now, and I've really enjoyed chatting, and there's so much content within that, and just having this conversation has been great. But there's a few questions I wanted. Well, one question I'm going to throw at you, and then some quick fire to finish off on, Becks, if that's okay.
Nervous, but yes.
No need. They're all your own personal ones, and they're nothing to throw you off. So simply, just before the quick fire and to sort of wrap up, what does reflection mean to you?
It is everything that you need to help yourself grow. So I do not take criticism well at all, and I'm very aware of that. So if I'm going into a space where I think that I'm about to receive criticism, I mentally prepare myself like no other. I know I'm not perfect and I make a million mistakes every day, but I still, for whatever reason, don't take criticism well. So I do mentally prepare myself for that. But reflection helps you grow in terms of, again, you've got to be mindful to the outcomes of a training session, for example, or the outcomes of a conversation. did I achieve those outcomes? Did I get my point across? Was I executing things well? Okay, things broke down. Was my response to it breaking down good? And my husband laughs at me. He's like, Bex, you'll talk yourself in circles all the time of things that, like, it's fine. Your response was fine, but you talk yourselves into this place where you did it wrong. So I think being mindful that it's also okay to still make those mistakes, but reflection piece helps you grow. It helps you see things that maybe you didn't see at the time. So you look back into a training session, or you remember a training session, and think about the outcomes to keep you focused on track. But you need to reflect, you need to grow. Especially, I mean, everyone, not even just young coaches like myself, but it's the tool that you need. Again, you ask your players to reflect on their game and be better and grow, and you got to do it yourself. You've got to mirror the behaviors that you want to see. So it's everything.
I love that, and I think you've just taken first place for the best quote on reflection and what that actually means. So I really appreciate that, and I love that, and I can't wait to actually mock that up in terms of getting that out there and sharing it. But I think that was such a great response to that question.
Appreciate that. I guess I was nervous for no reason.
Exactly, nothing to be nervous about. And so we're into the final stages now, the final third, as you may say. And we're gonna jump into the quick fires. So, if you had to have someone describe you in 3 words, what 3 words would they be?
Weird, hopefully funny. I would love to say caring, but I think maybe intelligent.
I agree, definitely. That's a strong word, and one that you can hear it right throughout as well, and that mindfulness generates from that. You might already be there, but if you could move to any country to coach, where would it be?
I think I'm here. It is everything I wanted from a younger age, so I think I'm here, but I would love down the road again, 20 years, 15 years. I would love to be coaching in the UK when women's soccer hits an even higher level than it has now.
Very exciting times, and sort of have a reversing process or journey maybe as well. Because, a lot of British coaches like myself might look at, the US as, right, leave the UK, get to the US, whereas you've gone from like UK, US, and then as you say, you're where you're at now, but you might end up and wanting to come back round to the UK, which is very exciting, and a chance for your husband to live maybe, as you're the one living across, for him to be the one living across.
Exactly. He's a Liverpool fan, though, so I don't know if he knows anything about football.
Hey, well, no, of course they don't. If you could spend a day with any manager or coach, who would it be?
It pains me to say Pochettino. Without
Yeah.
a doubt, it's Pochettino. I'm a Tottenham fan, so Pochettino gave us the best years we've had in a long time. It's very unfortunate he's at Chelsea, but I read his book that Guillem Balage wrote it, and it was a lot on culture and creating an environment where young players can thrive and things like that. But I'd love to. He just seems like a top guy, and I'd love to pick his brain.
Top one. I'm a Chelsea fan, and I'm a bit 50-50 on Posh and how it's going to look this year. I'm excited in a way, but I'm like, what did he really, really achieve at Spurs? And I'm like, right, does it actually come down to the squad? But did he do really well because of the squad? I think there's a lot of questions, and I think this year would be nice to sort of, even as like a Spurs fan, it's difficult. But I think it'd be nice to see if he does have some success in some way to go, yes, he was our manager. Look what he could have done, and then prove that to Levy again, which is the typical Spurs way.
Well, you're thinking that he wasn't successful at Spurs because you're looking through a Chelsea lens of, we'll just win quick and then we'll finish 10th for a year and then we'll get back into the Champions League.
Again, that's that reflective process, perspective, and improving it at the end, which is great.
Winners win.
Yes, exactly, and I think you're one of them as well. Who was or is your role model?
I would say no, it's my dad. In terms of my mom didn't come watch a single soccer game of mine growing up. I was playing for my youth national team. I was playing on really good teams back home, but my mom could care less about football. My dad drew me up and down the country. Honestly, without him, my life would be completely different. So I think upon reflection, as I've gotten older, I'm like, gee, everything that my life's given me now has been because of my dad's influence in football. And bringing me to training, playing with me in the backyard, driving me across the country, as I said, and then helping me achieve my American dream of coming over and playing college soccer. So I think and it's funny because as a kid, he wasn't. I didn't realize that, and now as an adult, I'm like, man, oh my, give me everything. So I would say my dad for sure. He had the biggest, obviously the biggest impact and influence over me, and now I look at kind of coaches that have achieved things within the American game. I'm also a big fan of Emma Hayes. I love how just a strong woman she is, and she leads so well. I love, she came over and coached over here, went back to England, and obviously has been incredibly successful there. Sarah Loden is someone as well I look up to. I love picking her brain when I can. She's a coach at the Houston Dash, and just people like that. But even one of my close friends, she's an assistant coach of a Division II program. She's been an assistant coach for 20 years, I think, and she's a huge influence and a role model for me on longevity of coaching. She's seen it all. She's been in conference finals. As a player, she was excellent. And just having someone like that so close to me is amazing. So having her, especially, she's about 10 years older than me, so she's obviously seen so much more than I have, and it's any situation I come across, it's so nice to just be like, hey Jamie, what do you think of this? Because she always has some sort of good advice to give me.
I love that, and some great choices within that, as well as a personal one, which is really nice, and nice to have that sort of insight as well as to why behind each of them as well, which is great. To have been a full-time professional player or a full-time professional coach?
Well, I think coach, because it's my path that I'm on now. But as a kid, I would have bit your hand off to be a professional player.
I love that. True to the coaching. If there was a choice of any job out there which you could take in terms of coaching, what job would it be?
I would love to be a youth national team coach or an assistant coach on a senior national team setup. I think just for the experience, whether that would be longevity, but I think just to experience an environment like that for maybe a year or two would be incredible.
I love that. And so you might be in a position and you're at a place where those senior national teams would look at Becks and like, yeah, she's done a great job. Look at what she's achieved. She'd be fantastic for our program. She could be a head coach here. And the US national team put you in a really good position or offer you the top job. And then Spurs women are like, right, there's a job. We found a manager, and they both come in at the same time. You've got to make a decision by the end of the weekend. Which one would you go for?
I just feel lame saying Spurs, but I love the club. I would love to, but then I feel like I would maybe have too much emotion attached to it, so that every result would be like crushing if we weren't winning, because I wouldn't be able to not be a fan. Whereas if U.S. national team or any national team, I think I would be able to compartmentalize my emotions a little better. But I think I'd love to say Spurs, but I don't think my emotions would be able to handle it.
Interesting. If you weren't coaching soccer or football, what would you be coaching?
I am only good at soccer. So I would say I would be teaching PE to probably primary school kids. But hopefully it would be like I actually would probably just be a history teacher at a high school. I think that would be probably what I would have done, or something along those lines. But
yeah.
There was no chance I was ever going to be able to coach another sport. Not a chance.
Strong, and you've picked the right sport as well, which is great.
Yeah.
Who is your all-time favourite player?
Good question. I loved Christian Eriksen. I love Jermaine Defoe. I think both obviously Spurs players. I think Jermaine Defoe, when we weren't very good, he just found a way to score goals, scored some nice goals, and every time I've seen him like on any sort of podcast or anything like that, he just seems like a good lad and someone like, don't meet your heroes. I think he's someone that you could meet and be like, wow, it's Jermaine Defoe, he's amazing. And Christian Eriksen as well, obviously. You know, did so much for Spurs, super talented player, and obviously went through awfulness, and has somehow bounced back and is thriving at United, sadly. But I loved him. I loved watching him play. I loved how he manipulated the ball. I was a center mid towards the latter stage of my career, and he's someone that I kind of wished I could have been. I was never as busy as he was, and certainly not as gifted. But in terms of him always wanting to get on the ball and progress the ball forwards, that was someone I looked to mirror my game off of.
Again, strong choices, and I love Jermaine Defoe, one of my all-time favourite players, and I think massively underrated and should have had a lot more opportunity at bigger clubs towards when he moved towards Portsmouth and etc.
Yeah.
And England as well, and I think same for Darren Bent as well in that. But Jermaine Defoe has always been one of my favourite players, especially on FIFA. If I was at a big club, I'd sign him, and he was just a great player. Yeah.
Who's your all-time favourite player?
My all-time favourite player, Xavi Hernandez. Again, sort of very similar. He played at Barcelona with Iniesta, Busquets, and Deco. And I was centre mid, and I always said to my mate Rory, I'm playing like Xavi. I want to be Xavi, but I can never execute what I wanted him to do. And I ended up playing a match last year with one of the best players I've ever played with. And he said, all you've done all match was just hit diags. I said, yeah, because I don't have the pace to recover. I don't have the pace to run up. I'm not that great as centre mid. I don't have the fitness for it either. So if I hit a diag, then I know I've moved the other player and the ball over there, and I've created that passing opportunity and maybe broke the line in the process.
Unbelievable. There you go.
Exactly, played to your strengths, and I thought, wow, I've had an awesome game.
Unbelievable. All you've done is hit the eggs. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
intentionally.
Yeah, exactly. If you could have a chance of managing any player, who would it be?
I would love to coach Sam Kerr from Chelsea.
Mm-hmm. I love her.
She's just the one video clip of her absolutely decking the guy running across the pitch.
I love that.
Like what a character she must be. I would love to see how she. So obviously she's a monster forward, right? Goal scorer, a machine up there. But I just think as a character and as a human being, it would be really fun to have her as a player on your team.
I watched the Chelsea women's documentary on DAZN, and very interesting insight. And as a Chelsea fan, it was exciting to watch anyway. But looking at the women's game, then looking at the type of players and the way that she came in and how that was covered, and how they had that interest of her coming in, and how the players maybe reacted to it, and therefore Ramona ended up moving across to PSG because she couldn't have that mindset to deal with Sam. It just showed that Sam was just that all-round character, and as you say there, and I think she's a fantastic player, Sam Kerr.
Yeah, she's a fun one. I'll have to look up that documentary you're talking about. I feel like that would be
well worth watching.
Very interesting. So it's on DAZN?
DAZN, yeah, well worth watching. Even if you get a 1 month, watch it and then just cancel. But make sure you don't do the 1 year subscription like I've ended up doing.
Oh, it's a stitch up. It's always a stitch up.
Oh, it's done me. I went to cancel it the other day. They were like, oh yeah, you can cancel it like April 2024. I was like, what?
Oh, not a chance. Unbelievable.
What is your biggest pet peeve?
Whininess. I certainly whine, by the way, so it's very much a one finger pointing, three pointing back at me. But when I think my pet peeve on the field is that, hey, let me mark. It drives me mad. It's just so unhelpful, and it's that's my pet peeve.
I love that. What is your most favorite thing to do in your downtime?
Video games.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the new Harry Potter game, which is not new anymore, came out in February. Unbelievable. But my husband and I, we actually in our house. My TV's here, his is there, and we sit back to back, and we'll play Call of Duty. We play Call of Duty Zombies. We haven't actually played in a while because we've both been busy. He coaches as well, so he coaches a high school boys team. He's got his own regular job, but he's a coach as well. So we've been busy in the past few months. But video games are my downtime for sure. FIFA sometimes.
I love that. Honestly, I really, really do love that, and levels that I aspire to as well. Having that downtime, someone to sit there, understand, and just to chill out with and do the things that you love to do, and get to do what you do every day, which you love. And if you had to sort of narrow it down and define what your 3 non-negotiables are, what are they?
You watch the High Performance podcast, don't you?
Live off it.
It's unbelievable. And every time I listen to it, I'm like, I wonder what mine are. I would say, it's a really tough question. Gosh. I mean, it's got to be the positive outlook, which again, I'm guilty of not having quite a lot of the time as well, but got to be positive. You've got to be willing to see a different way. And you've got to be mindful of how your actions and words impact others. So mindful, open to another way, or flexible to change, I guess, and then positive outlook.
I love them. I love that as well. And yeah, I did take it from the High Performance. And as they start off their podcast and go, well, what does high performance look to you and what are your non-negotiables? That's a question that is actually my number one question is, what does reflection mean to you? But I always end up getting straight into a conversation with everyone who starts. And then I'm like, right, and that's where I hence now put it at the end to get it in. I'm like, right, how could I structure that and how could I relate that to the name a bit more? But yeah, I live off that. And they were in Cardiff the other week. And in person, amazing, really fantastic to see. But yeah, one of my favourite podcasts.
That's awesome. And that was good reflection from you to rejig it so that you always have a moment to ask it. But it's been really fun.
Absolutely. And the final one to wrap up, what is the one thing you enjoy most about coaching?
The relationships that you build with the people in the room. So whether it's your players, because I'm biased, but I say this to everybody, I'm like, women's soccer players are the most fun demographic of people to be around. We are ridiculous, we're weird, we're all different, but we all have this common goal of soccer. And so each training session, you never know what you're going to get with goofy dances or jokes or songs or whatever. But also the love I have for the coaching community and the gratitude I have for the people in the coaching community that are just so open and willing to answer questions, or the amount of people that like should not have any time for me. They're like, Becks, if you need anything, give me a call. If you have any questions, give me a call. I'm like, dude, you got your own life. You don't need to care about mine. But I think the coaching community is amazing. And I think that's a huge part of why people stay, because the peers that you meet and the colleagues that you have, the relationships you establish with that, it's amazing. And we all have this common goal of soccer and guiding people's lives and hoping to make positive impacts. So, yeah, I think that's my final answer.
And what a way to finish off. What a fantastic episode and time spent with you, and well over that hour mark which we planned in for. But the way that you took it away and the way that you chatted and delved into everything, it's really been a true insight to you, your framework, where you're going, that outlook towards the future, how you manage the players, and hopefully creates that reflective process at a time when we might be able to speak again in the future and look back on the seasons or season and how that's looked and where you're at. But there was so much within that which I sort of had planned, but the conversation ended up taking a natural route towards a topic of authenticity, controllables, and language, which is good in terms of that environment and then culture which underlies that and which we've been able to delve into. But it's been a fantastic time, and we didn't even hit the surface, but I'm sure there's so much within there, Becks. And but I do really appreciate your time, especially during the day, and especially during a time when it's sort of preparing for a season and camps and etc. But it has been wonderful, and I really appreciate you coming on. And true to what the episode is about, it's been nice to know who the authentic Becks is.
No, this has been, honestly, it's been so enjoyable, and thanks so much for asking me on, and yeah, let's stay in touch, and for sure we'll be able to chat about so many things. I feel like this was a hefty who is Becks, but I feel like there's a lot that you have in between your ears as well that I could certainly learn and grow from as well. So certainly I'd love to pick your brain moving forward for sure. But I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. It's been awesome.
Absolute pleasure, and very much appreciate it. But take care. We'll definitely stay in touch, and thank you again from me, and have a good day.
Cheers, you as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you later.